Шановні колеги, тема наступного брифінгу – порядок денний встановлення справедливості, вимоги громадян.
Dear colleagues, we start our briefing agenda for restoring justice, requirements of civic organizations for future political parties. We have Kateryna Ryzhenko, Head of Legal Department, Transparency International, Ukraine, Mykhailo Zhernakov, Chairman of the DEJURE Foundation, Kateryna Butko, Coordinator of AvtoMaydan, Olena Shcherban, and Yulia Grechka. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. Today we have 20 civic organizations who support the agenda for restoring justice for those parties which are campaigning for the parliamentary elections. We believe that the justice had not been restored during last 5 years. Yesterday was the birthday date of Kateryna Ganzuk, and unfortunately her killers are not convicted yet. And the law enforcement reform, anti-corruption reform, judiciary reform had not shown many achievements, and even those achievements under the threat of demolishment. The law enforcement bodies, anti-corruption bodies quite often protect corruption. Ukrainian FMEDA is accountant to the oligarchs, not to civil society. So our agenda is as follows: real judiciary reform, revival of punishment for illegal earnings, reform of the internal affairs bodies, reform of the prosecutor's office, reloading of the National Investigation Bureau, preservation of the international procurement of medicines. We have made this agenda public and posted it on our website for MPs. You may review them and sign or accept if you are either an MP or political force which is campaigning for the parliament, for the membership in parliament. And we encourage participants of the parliamentary campaign to support this political agenda. On our side, we are ready to explain while all that items of the agenda are important for the country. It's not an exhaustive list of the requirements, but those are the most important. And of course, one of the important aspects of the agenda is judiciary reform. Judiciary reform had started in this country upon requirements of the Maidan revolution, and unfortunately it had not become successful. Only 1% of citizens believe that judiciary reform is successful, and unfortunately court decisions does not correspond neither to a common sense nor to the rule of law. So those bodies which deal with the selection of judges, the higher commission of judges should be reloaded and should be comprised of the civic experts and international experts, because these are those people to whom Ukrainian society trusts most. And we also need the competition for membership in the Constitutional Court. while the parliament wants to appoint only those candidates who were suggested by political factions in the parliament. Again, once again, it is not exhaustive list of our requirements, but we still hope that the next parliament, the next convocation of the parliament will make a step forward in this direction. Good afternoon. Among our requirements, we have the requirement about reform of the Ministry of Interior and cleaning of police. Again, it was the requirement of Maidan, but it does not happen. 93% of policemen had just changed their uniforms of militia into the uniform of policemen and remained in service. Many of them were restored in their positions via court decisions, and some days ago we had seen the result of that fake reform. And we pay a high price for the absence of true attestation of the policemen, because the price of child's life is a huge price that we pay. Instead of anti-corruption work, the police and law enforcement agencies have headed the corruption deeds. More than 50 attacks during last period was done on journalists, and all those cases are sabotaged by investigation of those cases is sabotaged by the police. Investigation of murders are heavily sabotaged. In all the cases, the persecutors were not fined, or quite often the court decisions are made which do not correspond to the heavy crimes. We want to remove Olena Shcherban from his position and announce reattestation of all officers of the police bodies. Another body which does not carry its function, this is the Security Service of Ukraine. While police or the Ministry of Interior had done even a pretended reform, the SBU continues to carry out those functions which should not be the function of the security service. This turns SBU into an instrument of pressure on business, an instrument of political pressure. Having analyzed the actions of those bodies, of that body, we suggest that the parliament had to repeal and annul activity of the SBU Directorate on Economic Crimes. The SBU has to be deprived from this function. It also has to be deprived from the function of the pre-investigative function. This function should go to the State Investigation Bureau. I am Kateryna Ryzhenko. I am from Ryzhenko from the Transparency International of Ukraine. Every year we compile our corruption perception index. Last year, Ukraine had raised in its in this rating up to 100 20th position. We managed to achieve this due to the anti-corruption court automatic refunding of VAT and the automatic appointment of judges. Unfortunately, much was not done. I would like to speak about the item of our agenda about restoring trust in the Prosecutor General's office. Last year, one of the prosecutor's office employees became in this central figure of the scandal when he made pressure on court, when he disclosed details of the investigation to the figures of investigation, etc. We encouraged Nazar Kholodnetsky to leave his position, and we believe that the trust could be restored if the leadership of the Special Anti-Corruption Prosecutor's Office should be changed or re-elected according to new procedure. The second important issue in the context of fight with top corruption is to restore responsibility for illegal wealth. Many bureaucrats after the Revolution of Dignity got rich and wealthy illegally and had received amnesty for that. 65 criminal cases about such bureaucrats were closed after recognition of this provision illegal about punishment for illegal enrichment, and many times we encourage the parliament to restore this punishment immediately. This constitutional court decision had weakened our anti-corruption positions very much. The parliament had to restore this provision and revive criminal responsibility for illegal wealth. This agenda is for the next convocation of the parliament. We also, as Transparency International, stand for continuation of ProZorro public procurement procedure, and this would allow Ukraine to reach better indicators in the corruption perception index. Good afternoon, dear friends. I am Yulia Grechka from Anti-Corruption Headquarters. We are happy to be part of the NGOs which represents the anti-corruption agenda. We work much on anti-corruption agenda. And we deal with many cases. During our activities, we managed to trace back millions of hryvnia, but today we observe that the corruption problem had become very topical. I would like to point out to two our priorities, like reloading of national anti-corruption committee. It proved to be inefficient in its work with the conflict of interests and other anti-corruption aspects. Actually, nobody was brought to responsibility for corrupt decisions. That's why we appeal to the members of to the candidates to parliament that NAZK leadership should be dismissed, and that the responsibility for NAZK decisions should be made personal. NAZK had failed to develop a strategy how to tackle the conflict of interest, and while the corruption issue remains one of the priorities for society, NAZK failed to pass the main document devoted to anti-corruption work. So we encourage all the MPs to pay attention at these issues and to include these issues into their agenda.
Good afternoon, dear friends. Olena Shcherban. I'm the member of Anti-Corruption Action Center. We all understand that the agenda of justice, this is about judiciary and law enforcement bodies. And in the system, big role is played by General Prosecutor's Office. Unfortunately, reforms in the sector didn't happen, and the journalist investigation showed that a lot of unfair prosecutors are still in their positions. And the General Prosecutor's Office is headed by a politician, and this is a political body now. And as of today, criminal proceedings are politicized, and we should appoint to Prosecutor's General Office. We should appoint professionals to this office, and this should be put on the agenda. Also, disciplinary commissions, the commission should also work efficiently. This body is not efficient as of now. That's why we should reload the qualification and disciplinary commission, and foreign experts should participate in this. Also, about Bureau of Investigation, this body discredited itself. The leaders of this organization are not able to work efficiently, so there should be a change in the nomination, and the State Bureau Investigation should be formed by the territorial, it should be formed by the Cabinet of Ministers, and parliamentarians should create the Service for Economic Investigations to investigate banking frauds and other issues. It should specialize in this. Also, international procurements of medicines are also important. This is an efficient system. During the first year of its work, it showed that we may buy medicines for 40% of what it was before, to buy medicines for oncology patients, oncology, children who suffer from oncology. And this work should be continued. So this is the short list voiced by my colleagues, and we call on political forces that go to the parliament to support the agenda and to provide answers to the questions raised by the society. Thank you. Now we will have time for questions. The first question. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. Alexandra Drik, head of NGO Declarations Under Control. First, I would like to thank you for this presentation. And for me, it was pleasant and weird at the same time, because I usually joined you during these actions. A month ago, we presented a site about the failures of NAZK, and also I was glad because I understand that we may join you in a month, and maybe the Parliament will introduce such changes we discussed today. And I am together with Samopomic in these elections, and this was the only faction in the Parliament that really contributed to reforms in judiciary. And Samopomic faction is ready to speak about this agenda, and we invite you to discussion. And I really hope that the new parliament will be able to implement all those decisions we fought for during these recent years. Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Sergei Pototsky, co-chair of the Monitoring Center NGO, and we also would like to join this initiative and to add several issues. So this is important. So all those proposals you voiced today, this is the technical level for months or a year. But if we are speaking about strategy, so this perception of fighting corruption, it may improve if we deliver campaigns at schools. For example, when I ask children why there are some problems on the roads, the children say that this is because of corruption. So this is not only about bribes for teachers and doctors. There are global consequences of corruption. There is lack of kindergartens and problems with roads, and maybe we should educate our children starting third or fourth form, and maybe for students at schools, we should deliver a campaign to inform them on the issues of corruption. Also, this is another important issue is cutting of forests. Forbes magazine, they delivered an article about global warming, and Ukraine feels this negative impact, and Ukraine is one of the biggest supplier of illegally cut wood. We should fight this, and those who cut wood, they have salary of 5,000 or 6,000, and they declare in their declarations, they declare big flats and some other assets, and law enforcers, they cover all this. So we worked with International Foundation on Nature, and also I would like to call on all parties to have a proper attitude towards the resolution of these issues. So this is the agenda for the Parliament. These are first steps in the assessment of law enforcement, and they should cover all those issues. Yes, we are really glad that you want to join us. This is really good that new participants appear, those who want to join us. Once again, those issues about education. Yes, this is on the agenda, because if there is a strategy that would envisage anti-corruption education, then we will see where our country goes in this area, and this should be included in the agenda. When we are speaking about cutting woods and procurement problems, only reformed law enforcement bodies and courts will be able to resolve this issue. So we may put all this on the agenda of the parliament, but our main priority is justice and law enforcement bodies and judiciary bodies. Thank you. I would like to add about first part, about education. NAZK or an ACP, it is not efficient, and now we develop anti-corruption strategy 2019-2023. We have the draft of this document, and you may also get this draft. If you have some proposals concerning education, we will take them into account. Maria Posarenko, 24th channel, about Avakov. We see that Vladimir Zelensky, as of now, if we see that there is, they go to Mariupol together with Avakov, and if Avakov remains in his position, and if a servant of the people will be the lobbyist to remain, for Avakov to remain in his position, maybe, what about the reform of police, and how can we avoid the situation if Avakov remains on his position? Do you see some other ways? Because now the situation is not clear what the president may do with Avakov. Thank you for your question. So, Minister Avakov, this will be, we held actions near the Ministry of Internal Affairs, and we tried to show that the decision that will be taken by the president concerning Avakov, this is the key aspect that will show whether the president is able to reform law enforcement body, police, and the Ministry of Internal Affairs. As of now, we believe that if this official remains at the ministry and the head of the national police, so there won't be any reform. We won't expect it, because Minister Avakov is maybe the only who remained on the position during these 5 years, and he bears full 100% responsibility for the failure of police reform. We do not have illusions. If he stays, nothing will change. Thank you. Do you have other questions to our speakers? If there are no, we would like to thank our speakers, and we end our briefing.